All right, here we go. We're going to talk about another shop video today. Today's shop video is brought to you by Cobalt. And what we're going to do is talk to you about some of the prep work it's going to take to put your stool together, some of the things that you are missing. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure my sleeves are rolled up, make sure my glasses are on, make sure my loose jewelry and stuff is taken care of, and we're ready to go. The first thing we need to do is start talking about the different pieces that we need for our stool. Now, we've done a little bit of prep work. We've already cut the legs, we've already cut the supports, we've already cut the seat supports. We're going to talk about cutting the dowels, even though we may have already done that, depending on the time frame we were working in. I may have you do that, or I may do that myself. One of the things we haven't really touched on is the seat. And if we will go back to the video, the seat is actually 4.5 wide by 12 inches long. So what we need to do then is go ahead and kind of cut those on the table saw. So we're going to go there and... so in order to cut this stool seat, right, 4.5 by 12, we're going to use a couple tools in the shop that we've already talked a lot about. We're going to start by cutting the width on our table saw and then cutting the length on our chop saw or our miter saw. So we're going to back up here and we're going to start by setting the guide or the fence on the table saw. We're going to do that by measuring the distance from the inside of the blade to the fence, which is already marked at 4.5 inches. We have our push stick ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and take these long strips of wood or long pieces and cut them to width at 4.5 inches. So here we go. Make sure it's tight against the fence. Put my hands back, I'm going to grab my push stick. I'm going to push all the way to the ground. Turn off the machine, and now I'm going to take that piece and we're going to go over to the chop saw. All right, now we're over to the chop saw. We have our piece now 4.5 inches wide, and we need them 12 inches in length. So I'm going to take my measuring tape, make a mark at 12. Take my speed square, slide it up to the edge, mark it at 12 inches. Line up the blade on the bad side of the side I'm not going to be using. Go ahead and cut that 12 inches. I'm going to need 2 of them, so I'm actually going to use this one as my pattern. Line them up. Again, put the blade on the side over here. Now I have my 2 pieces for my seat as they come together. Now you're going to see this in another video that I'm going to show you. This is our router table. Remember, the cutting blade is on the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and route 3 sides of this, so as our legs come in contact with the back of this, it has a nice smooth surface on the edge. And so we're going to go ahead and make sure that we understand the boards only feed in this direction, and the cutter is on the bottom, so the part that we're going to cut is going to be on the bottom, so we're going to make sure that's there. We have a nice guard to protect our hands. We're going to make sure that we go ahead and push it all the way across the fence in the back, and then when we're done, we're going to do the sides or the edges also. I'm going to do the edges actually first. So here we go. Notice I'm not going to flip it over. I'm just going to go this side. And keep it face down. We have all 3 sides good there. Same thing with this one. have my stool as it's going to come together. It's going to create a nice flat center and then a nice rounded edges on the outside. These all need to be sanded with the palm sanders, which we went over, and that's going to bring us to our next step. Now we have our stool kind of put together. We have our dowel rods cut. We have our 9-inch dowel in the center. We have our dowel pins on the outside edges. We have the dowel pins in the centers connecting the legs together. We have this all kind of sanded and flat out in front of us. We have our 4.5 by 12-inch pieces for our seat. We have our glue ready to go. We have our 11-inch pieces, so they're ready to go, and we're ready to kind of put this thing together. We're also going to use a tool called a brad nailer, right? And the brad nailer is going to look like this. You may also hear it called a trim nailer, or maybe a pin nailer. But if we open this up, sort of like a stapler, it has little tiny brads or little tiny pin nails. The nails are very, very small. If you look carefully at them, you can see them. They're little tiny nails, and they're not so much used for holding it together as for strength, but it's really a quick solution to get this thing stuck together so the glue can really hold it together. So really important, the brad nailer is run by air or pneumatically run. So we're going to connect the air hose here. The air hose is going to run about 100 psi, and it's going to shoot those nails out the bottom. So it does have a trigger here. It does have a safety mechanism, but these can be very, very dangerous. We've got to be making sure where our hands are at and making sure that they're going to be pushed down into the wood and not shooting out the side or out the edge. But they do work really, really well, and they are very useful in this application. So now that we have our stool kind of set up, we have all our pieces kind of set up, we do have to look at this thing, because if we put it together wrong, just like putting it together when I showed you in the last video, that if we put it together wrong, it won't work, all right? It won't open. And so we have to look at these pieces again on the outside. So if you look here, we have the inside ones pointing down and the outside ones pointing up. Now, if I flipped it over this way, it would be completely opposite. But we're gonna look at the ones that are pointing up. All right, and we're gonna call those outside, outside. So when the pieces are pointed up, all right, and the pieces are pointed up, then we are going to be gluing our seat to outside, outside. So I have to put the unrouted piece to the center, and I'm gonna make sure that these are lined up here, and I'm going to glue and staple or brad nail this to those outside pieces, all right? So I'm gonna kind of flip this back, and I'm gonna glue just on these outside edges. Now, when I glue is a great resource, all right? It really does a great job at holding things together. But glue can also be very messy. We don't want glue all over our project running down the side, because it's gonna glue our stool together and it won't open. So now I have glue on the outside edges. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of look at this again and make sure I have it in the right spot. And I'm gonna make sure it's even on the edge and kind of pull these out to the right spot exactly where I want it to go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and hook the hose up to the nailer. And that just happens by we pull this collar back, and it's gonna fit over top of this, and that collar will hang on to that, and therefore allowing us to have the air hose connected to it. Now again, I'm gonna make sure that I glued it on outside, outside, so I wanna staple it on outside, outside. I'm gonna do that by just pushing it down, making sure my hands aren't on the edge so the brad doesn't stick out. Make sure this is straight up and down. Just gonna pull the trigger, and there we go. I'm gonna do that a couple times. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side, making sure that it's even. Just like that. Now I'm gonna flip it over, and now my outsides are on the inside. So now my next side is gonna be glued on inside, inside. So the same thing, the unrouted edge is gonna be facing up. I'm gonna flip it back like that, and this time I'm gonna just glue just on the inside pieces. It's like this. I'm gonna flip this back so it's like this here. I'm gonna push these out like that, make sure that it's even. And now I'm only gonna staple on inside, inside. So I'm going to staple in here. Gotta make sure it's even again. I'm going to do that a couple times on each side. And what I should have is my stool should open up just like that, which is what we want. So that looks pretty good. Now you can notice that it's kind of wobbly because the legs are not supported yet. So we're going to close it back up, set it back down, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to look at where we stapled these at. So this is outside, outside. So we're going to glue these 11s down here on the bottom, about 2 inches up from the bottom, on outside, outside also. So I'm going to put a little glue on outside, 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 just like this. And I'm going to do the same thing by putting a couple brads on outside, outside. I'm going to flip it over, and now I'm going to go inside, inside. So I'm going to go ahead, make sure it's even. This time I'm going to put the glue on inside, inside. Again, making sure these ones are on the inside here that are up. Make sure it's even with the other side. This time, brad nail on inside, inside, and inside, inside. Now we should have this opened up. Closes up just perfect. We're really happy with that. Doesn't wobble. I'm really pleased with that. And now I'll be ready to sand it, fill the holes, and work on the wood burning. Looks great.